My long-lost brother had the same tattoo, the waitress said. The billionaire froze in shock. What if the person serving your coffee held the key to a mystery that had haunted you for 30 years? Rebecca wiped down the counter at Murphy's Diner for the 100th time that morning, her weathered hands moving in the same rhythm they had for the past 8 years. At 36, she'd grown comfortable with routine, with predictability, with the gentle hum of regular customers who knew her name and took their coffee black. But when the sleek black car pulled into the parking lot that Tuesday morning, everything she thought she knew about her life was about to shatter. The man who stepped out wore a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, his confident stride carrying him through the door like he owned the world. Maybe he did. But it wasn't his expensive watch or perfectly styled hair that made Rebecca's breath catch in her throat. It was something far more personal, far more impossible, peeking out from beneath his shirt sleeve. Where are you watching from today? The morning had started like any other at Murphy's Diner, with the familiar sound of bacon sizzling and coffee brewing. Rebecca had been working there since her divorce 8 years ago, when she'd needed a fresh start and a steady paycheck to support her teenage daughter. The regulars knew her story. Single mom, hard-working, always had a kind word and a warm smile despite whatever struggles life threw her way. She'd built a quiet life in this small town, far from the chaos of her childhood in foster care. James Mitchell slid into booth 7, the same booth where the town's retired schoolteacher usually sat with her crossword puzzle. But Mrs. Henderson was nowhere to be seen today. Instead, this stranger, clearly not from around here, studied the laminated menu with a kind of polite patience that suggested he was used to much fancier places. Rebecca approached with the coffee pot, her practiced smile firmly in place. "Morning, Hon. Coffee to start?" she asked, already reaching for the ceramic mug. "Please," he replied, his voice carrying just a hint of an accent she couldn't quite place. "And thank you." As she poured, Rebecca noticed his hands, manicured, soft, the hands of someone who'd never known physical labor. But when he reached for the sugar, her eyes caught something that made her nearly drop the coffee pot. There, on his inner wrist, was a tattoo. Not just any tattoo, but a small anchor with a rope twisted around it, identical to one she remembered from long ago. "That's an unusual tattoo," she found herself saying before she could stop herself. James glanced down at his wrist, then back up at her with a puzzled expression. "I've had it since I was 18. Got it with..." He paused, his face darkening slightly. "Well, it was a long time ago." Rebecca's heart began racing. The anchor tattoo wasn't common, especially not with that particular rope design. She'd only seen it once before, on a scared 12-year-old boy who'd shared a foster home with her for 3 months before disappearing from her life forever. A boy who'd promised they'd always be family, no matter what happened. A boy named Jamie. Rebecca steadied herself against the table, her mind reeling. Could this polished, wealthy man really be the same frightened boy who'd held her hand during thunderstorms at the Hendersons' foster home? Jamie had been her protector then, even though he was only 2 years older. When the other kids teased her about her second-hand clothes or the way she stuttered when nervous, Jamie would step in with that quiet courage that made him seem older than his 12 years. "I'm sorry," James said, noticing her staring. "Is everything all right?" "The tattoo," Rebecca whispered, her voice barely audible. "Did you get it with your sister?" The coffee mug slipped from James's fingers, sending hot coffee splashing across the table. His face went completely white, and for a moment, Rebecca saw the vulnerable boy she'd once known peeking through the confident businessman's facade. "How could you possibly know that?" he asked, his voice shaking. Rebecca sank into the booth across from him, her legs suddenly too weak to support her. "Because I have the same one." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing the identical anchor and rope tattoo on her inner wrist. "My brother and I got matching ones before." Her voice broke. "Before they separated us." James stared at the tattoo, then at her face, searching for features he might recognize after nearly 25 years. "Becca," he whispered, using the nickname only one person had ever called her. "Little Becca from the Henderson house?" Tears sprang to her eyes as she nodded. All those years of wondering, of searching social media for any trace of the brother who'd promised to find her. All those nights she'd traced the tattoo with her finger, remembering the teenager who'd worked odd jobs to save money for their matching ink, who'd sworn they'd be reunited someday. "I looked for you," James said, his own eyes glistening. "For years, I looked everywhere. But when they moved you to that family in Ohio—" "The Clarks," Rebecca finished. "They changed my last name when they adopted me. I tried to find you too, but Jamie Mitchell had vanished. If this moment has touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up." The weight of 25 years of separation hung between them, mixed with the overwhelming joy of finding each other again. But as they sat there, Rebecca noticed something in James's expression, a shadow that suggested their reunion might not be as simple as she'd hoped. James pulled his hands back from the table, and Rebecca saw the exact moment when the businessman's walls went back up. This is incredible," he said, but his tone had shifted from emotional to controlled. "I can't believe it's really you." Rebecca felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "Jamie, what's wrong? Aren't you happy? I've spent my whole adult life wondering if you were okay, if you remembered me." "Of course I remembered you," he said quickly, but he was already glancing toward the door. "It's just complicated. My life now, it's very different. I have responsibilities, a company, people depending on me." The words hit Rebecca like a physical blow. She'd imagined this reunion 1,000 times, tears of joy, promises to never lose touch again, finally having family. She'd never imagined polite distance from the boy who'd once shared his last piece of bread with her. "I work for Mitchell Enterprises," she said quietly. "The cleaning service I work for has your office building contract. I've been cleaning your company's floors for 3 years, never knowing." James's face paled further. "You clean our building." The shame in his voice cut deep. Rebecca straightened her shoulders, drawing on the pride that had carried her through years of struggle. "Yes, I clean floors. And I wait tables. And I raised a beautiful daughter on my own. I'm not ashamed of my work, Jamie. But I can see you are." "That's not." He started, then stopped. The silence stretched between them, filled with the clatter of dishes and the ordinary sounds of the diner that had witnessed something extraordinary. "I used to tell myself stories about you," Rebecca continued, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "How you'd become successful, how you'd found a good life. I was proud of you before I even knew who you'd become. But I never imagined you'd be embarrassed by where you came from. By me." James's carefully constructed composure finally cracked. "I'm not embarrassed by you, Becca. I'm embarrassed by me. By the fact that I had the resources to find you and I gave up. By the fact that I've been so busy building walls around my success that I forgot what really mattered." Have you ever faced something like this? Have you ever let pride or fear keep you from the people you love most? Let us know in the comments. The truth hung between them now, raw and painful, but perhaps it was exactly what they needed to find their way back to each other. Rebecca watched as years of carefully controlled emotion finally broke through James's polished exterior. His shoulders shook as he buried his face in his hands, and suddenly she was looking at the scared 12-year-old again, the boy who'd cried silently into his pillow so the other foster kids wouldn't hear. "I had nightmares for years about losing you," he whispered. "Every time I closed my eyes, I saw you crying as they drove you away. I promised myself I'd become successful enough to take care of you, to give you everything you deserved. But somewhere along the way, I became someone I don't even recognize." Rebecca slid around to his side of the booth, her waitress instincts kicking in as she grabbed napkins for his tears. "Oh, Jamie. You were 14 years old. You couldn't have stopped them from separating us. But I could have tried harder to find you later. I could have hired investigators, used my connections." He looked up at her with eyes that held decades of regret. "Instead, I told myself you were better off without the reminder of those horrible years in foster care." "Those weren't all horrible years," Rebecca said gently. "The 3 months we had together? Those were some of the happiest of my childhood. You taught me how to be brave, how to stand up for myself. You showed me what it meant to have someone who cared. James pulled out his phone with trembling fingers, scrolling to a photo. I still have this, he said, showing her a creased picture of two kids with matching gap-toothed grins, arms wrapped around each other. I've carried it in every wallet for 25 years. Rebecca gasped. She'd lost her copy years ago in one of many moves, but seeing it again brought back a flood of memories. How they'd begged Mrs. Henderson to take this photo, how they'd promised to always remember this moment. I have something too, Rebecca said, pulling a small object from her pocket. It was a smooth stone, painted blue, that Jamie had given her on her last day at the Henderson house. You told me to keep it so I'd never forget that somewhere out there, I had a brother who loved me. The breakthrough came when James finally looked directly into her eyes and saw not judgment, but the same unconditional love they'd shared as children. If you've been enjoying this story and want to see more heartwarming tales like this one, please subscribe to our channel. I want to meet your daughter, he said suddenly. I want to know everything about your life. And I want you to know mine, the real me, not the one I've been hiding behind. 3 hours later, the lunch rush at Murphy's Diner had come and gone, but Rebecca and James remained in booth 7, surrounded by empty coffee cups and a lifetime's worth of stories. Rebecca had called her manager to explain she needed the afternoon off for a family emergency. The best kind of emergency, she'd said with tears in her eyes. James had learned about Rebecca's daughter Katie, a bright 17-year-old who wanted to study environmental science. He'd heard about Rebecca's struggles and triumphs, her quiet strength in building a life from nothing. Rebecca had discovered that her brother's success came with its own loneliness, that despite his wealth and accomplishments, he'd never married, never had children, never allowed himself to get close enough to anyone to risk the pain of loss again. I want to help with Katie's college tuition, James said as the afternoon sun slanted through the diner windows. Jamie, no. Rebecca shook her head. That's not why I told you about her. We're doing fine on our own. I know you are. You've done an incredible job raising her. But let me be her uncle. Let me be part of her life, and yours. Not as some wealthy benefactor, but as family. He reached across and squeezed her hand. I've spent 25 years trying to fill the hole you left when they took you away. I don't want to waste another day. Rebecca smiled through her tears. She's going to love you. She's always wanted an uncle. And she makes the best chocolate chip cookies, almost as good as the ones Mrs. Henderson used to make. You remember those? James laughed, the first genuine laugh Rebecca had heard from him all day. How could I forget? You always saved me the biggest one. As the afternoon turned to evening, they made plans. Real plans. Sunday dinners, family holidays, all the ordinary moments that would weave their lives back together. James would start coming to the diner regularly, not as a customer, but as the brother who wanted to be part of Rebecca's world. He'd already canceled 2 important meetings and turned off his phone, declaring this the most important business he'd ever conducted. When they finally stood to leave, James pulled Rebecca into a hug that lasted 30 seconds too long and felt 30 years overdue. I love you, little sister, he whispered. I love you too, big brother, she whispered back. The anchor tattoos on their wrists pressed together as they embraced, symbols of the bond that had survived foster care, separation, and decades of wondering. They were home at last, not to a place, but to each other. If you enjoyed this story of family, love, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts about family reunions in the comments below, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories that celebrate the connections that make life meaningful. Sometimes the most important meetings happen in the most ordinary places, and the greatest treasures are the people we thought we'd lost forever.